Cool. We are continuing to see people trickle in. It looks like we're at 28 folks who are able to make time on an evening for this. So thank you all for being here. Our last panelist is just hopping on, but maybe while we wait, we can just do a little bit of quick housekeeping. We will all introduce ourselves in due course. But my role on this webinar, my name's Harrison, and I'm gonna try to help moderate the Q&A and help make sure we're sort of passing things back and forth between all the people we have assembled here. And the thing that's gonna help us do that is by using the Q&A function in Zoom. So the chat is set up to go just to the panelists. If you put something in the chat, it will only be us who sees it. So instead, you wanna click on the Q&A button. That allows you to ask a question so that the team and so that other people on the webinar can see it. As we go, we'll pause for questions on some specific sections. So we'll address some sort of relevant questions as we go, and then we're aiming to leave lots of time at the end to sort of answer all of the other questions. So if we don't get to your question right away, we will get there. We're just gonna try to sort of prioritize a little bit based on when we're talking about what, and then get to everything else at the end. And last note, if you are watching this as a recording, perhaps because you're watching a large televised national event at the moment, we would love to hear your questions, and you can send them to help@ideas42ventures.com, and we will make sure they get to a person who can answer them. That's my housekeeping, and with that, I will pass things off to Mark to get us started.
Wonderful. Thank you, Harrison. And thank you all who made time this evening to learn more about the Ideas 42 Venture Studio and Ventures for Shared Prosperity. As Harrison noted, we are looking for a lively conversation. The last one of this was incredible, so many wonderful questions. It was awesome. And although my colleague Vivian doesn't know, we will actually stay all night if you have questions. So don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. So we're going to kick things off just sort of to briefly share where we're going to go here. We're going to do a little bit of welcome and team introductions, always nice. Speak a little bit about why we're here, why we built this venture studio and what we're hoping to accomplish. Then a few details on our model, how we think about building businesses, how we work with you to make these things happen, and what resources we provide and what that means for you as a potential entrepreneur. And then some details on why and how you should apply. Everyone should apply, and what we're looking for. And then questions, which we will be continually taking, but we will have extra time at the end. So for starters, this slide shows sort of the broader network, both at Ideas 42, at the Venture Studio, and then our initial advisory crew. We have a wonderfully talented and diverse network of individuals, both on the Ideas 42 side, including software developers, behavioral designers, and many other things. And then our advisor network is truly wonderful, and I gain so much. I learned so much from each and every one of them. But the group you have on today is a smaller but mighty, or still mighty, or some verb there, or descriptor. I'm going to start with myself. My name is Mark. I'm the studio lead, and I'm responsible for guiding the vision and maintaining our focus on delivering massive social impact through the development of sustainable, scalable software businesses powered by behavioral science. What brings me joy about this specifically, the Ventures for Shared Prosperity, is an opportunity to work with entrepreneurs from a wide range of backgrounds and help elevate their talent and voices and scale their impact and allow them to bring their ideas to help and support millions of people across our incredible country. With that, I'm going to hand it to my colleague, Donardo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Donardo Rodriguez. I'm supporting on the topic selection workstream, which seeks to identify what focus area the studio will take on with each one of our cohorts. I would say that with my role in the studio, I am most excited to be able to work to address the problems related to the causes of poverty through the lens of excess costs, which we will discuss in greater detail later on in the presentation. But with that, I'll pass it over to Mike.
Thanks, Bernardo. My name is Mike Burstein. I've been working with Bernardo on our topic selection process. What excites me the most about the studio is I've done a lot of work at Ideas 42 to support entrepreneurs to kind of optimize and redesign their platforms with existing products. And so I'm really excited to work with hopefully someone on this webinar to do so from the ground up. With that, I will pass to Vivian.
Thanks, Mike. Hey everyone, I'm Vivian Caetano, and I'm working on thinking about how we're going to structure and support and work with the entrepreneurs that we'll have on board. And the thing I am most excited about in my role here is going to be working with entrepreneurs to use the tools and insights from behavioral science to really build some impactful and scalable solutions. And I'll hand it over to my colleague, Blessing.
Thanks, Vivian. Hey everyone, my name is Blessing Oguniemi, and I'm working on the cohort engagement workstream with Vivian and also on the recruitment workstream with Harrison. And I am most excited about recruiting and working with entrepreneurs who have lived experience and will be able to bring insights into building businesses with us. And I will pass things to Harrison.
Thanks, Blessing. My name is Harrison Newert. I'm working on the recruitment workstream with Blessing. And today, as I mentioned at the top of this webinar, I'm also going to just try to steer the ship a little bit. So if questions get lost, I'll sort of be the one to help our team figure out who should answer them. I'm super excited specifically to start reading applications. We've seen a number of applications come in. It's really cool to go from sort of thinking and talking as a team about what we want the studio to be, to starting to see people who we don't know express their interest in it and their ideas for it. And I'm really energized about reading all of your applications. With that in mind, I will pass things to my colleague, Katie.
Thanks, Harrison. My name is Katie Davis. With my colleague, Manasi, I lead the financial health work at Ideas 42. What am I excited about for the Venture Studio? I believe strongly in the power of bringing together people with very different perspectives and skills to solve problems. So I'm very excited about the cross-disciplinary nature of the team we're assembling here at the studio. And I will pass it to my colleague, Manasi.
Hi everyone, I'm Manasi, and I'm reconsidering the lighting in my apartment, given how this all looks. But I am also with Katie working on the financial health team and work across all of these teams. And I'm most excited about kind of, as Katie said, the collaborations between us and the entrepreneurs, and really letting the insights we learn from our intended users of our products to really drive a lot of how we think about the work and how we shape the product experience.
Wonderful. Thank you, Manasi, and thank you, everyone. I would be remiss if I didn't mention on the audio line, we have our colleague Tyler Gaw, who's our lead software developer, who built the beautiful website you see, has designed a lot of our backend infrastructure, and I am confident he is extremely excited to help you bring your ideas from prototype to MVP and beyond. So Tyler is here with us in Q&A room spirit. Thank you, Tyler, for joining. So why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? This country faces tremendous challenges today, and poverty in our country is widespread and has been for a long time, and is being made much worse by COVID-19. People don't have access to food. People are at risk of losing their homes, and people can't even pay for their regular expenses. This is a tragedy of catastrophic proportions that we will be working in this country for decades to fix. As a part of this effort, we're looking to be a part of that solution, a way to help those who are in need by building behavioral science informed software businesses that help solve some of the challenges related to living in poverty in America. And here to talk and give you a little flavor of the specific focus area for this cohort, my colleague Bernardo, who worked very hard with Mike to do a bunch of research around this. So I'm going to let you do the reveal, Donardo, and tell me when you want to switch to the next slide. So it's all yours.
Yeah, we can jump right ahead, Mark. Thank you so much. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier on in the introduction, the focus area of this first cohort of entrepreneurs is the excess cost of poverty. This is also commonly known as a poverty tax or a poverty premium, which in simple terms is this idea that it is expensive to be poor in the United States. And so for those of you that are selected as entrepreneurs of this first cohort, you'll be working with the Venture Studio team and myself to identify and create businesses that address and reduce the excess cost of poverty for those living on low incomes. With that being said, however, I think it is important to understand in greater detail the many different forms the poverty tax may manifest itself. The first of which are things that are just costlier in real terms for those living off low incomes. A good example of this is with car insurance. Insurers oftentimes use algorithms to calculate premiums using variables like credit score, which inherently target low-income individuals because they are more likely to have a lower credit score. Secondly, are disproportionate costs, which are expenses that are the same for everyone, but given certain contextual features, they tend to be disproportionately borne by those who live off a low income. A good example of this includes fines and fees in the criminal justice system. So we all know that traffic fines and fees come at the same cost for everyone, but given select structural barriers and biases, are more likely to be borne by select segments of the population, which in the case of traffic fines and fees translates to an excess cost for Black and brown drivers throughout the United States. Third are deferred costs, and the idea behind this interpretation of excess costs is that there are expenses that individuals may take on today that seem reasonable and equal amongst all people, but we find that these expenses prove to be more costly in the long term for select segments of the population. A perfect example of this are individuals and families opting to purchase a lower quality car as opposed to investing and saving for a higher quality one. Because the lower quality car is cheap and meets present needs, it seems to be the best option, but when calculating the money spent over the lifeline to maintain that same car, it proves to be more costly for the future self. And finally, fourth are non-financial costs that take the form of additional temporal, administrative, and cognitive burdens that may not have a monetary value, but still prove to be immensely costly for those living off of limited resources. So for example, having to spend more time on childcare or having to spend more time on caregiving for a child or a sick relative is not a direct financial cost, but it's still a cost nonetheless that we wanted to make sure we encapsulated with the way we've defined excess costs for this first cohort of entrepreneurs. From the perspective of an applicant, understanding what this focus area entails is critical because it's been infused into our application and review process. So I would encourage for all of you all interested in applying from now up until the 25th of October to really take the time to review our website in great detail to further familiarize yourself with this first cohort's focus area. Again, our website is ideas42ventures.com. And there you will not only get a more in-depth understanding of what the excess cost of poverty is, but you will also get some insight on other ways it can present itself in the lives of our target population. With that being said, I just want to flag that the structures and examples highlighted on the slide and on our website are just there to guide your understanding on what the excess cost of poverty is, but don't feel as though you have to limit yourself to the options we are presenting on. The Venture Studio team has spent quite a bit of time thinking through what the excess cost of poverty is and the different ways it can manifest itself in the day-to-day lives of those living off low incomes. But by no means have we covered everything, right? I think I can speak for all of us on the panel when I say that one of the things we are all looking forward to when reviewing your applications is reading about and further understanding how the excess cost of poverty manifests itself in the various different spaces you all occupy, both professionally and personally. So with that, I'll pause to see if there's any questions on this first portion of the presentation before I transition it over back to Mark. But let me just quickly open the question box to see.
Leonardo, we did have one come in through a chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so I encourage you to use the Q&A so you can see the questions, but we did have one come into the chat. So Leonardo, do we need to have an idea of which of these we want to work on in order to apply?
That's a great question, and the answer is no. So you don't have to apply. You don't have to have an idea on what your business is going to be, or even what aspect of excess cost you need to focus on. The application is set up just to gauge your passion and your interest in the subject matter. But no, you don't have to know what focus area or what aspect of excess cost you're interested in to be able to apply.
Great, thank you, Donardo. And to sort of amplify on that, I would note, we actually think having a pre-existing business idea is yet another barrier to participation in the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we think is not a particularly important barrier. And so not having an idea is not a problem. In fact, I think it's a feature. What we are looking for is a passion for solving problems related to the challenges that people low income, moderate income America have, and the traits that we believe are critical to success in entrepreneurship. I'll also note, so one other question you hear about is this program open to international applicants? Unfortunately, this program, we're currently only able to work with individuals who are currently able to work in the US. We are hoping in future cohorts to be able to open up. And I encourage you to stay on our email list and we will alert you when that happens. I will.
Yeah, so we've got a question that seems very relevant around sort of thinking about the symptoms and outcomes of poverty and the systemic causes. This question comes from Sam. And so I wonder, Donardo or Mike, if either of you want to tackle this one while we're in the Q&A for the topic area section.
Sorry, Mike, were you going to jump in?
I can, but go ahead if you have an answer ready.
Go for it.
All right.
Go for it.
So I guess there's two ways I could answer this. So the first is that this effort is part of a larger effort called the Shared Prosperity Catalyst, but that has three verticals. This is the Venture Studio is one of them. And then we also have two simultaneous efforts underway, one of which is focused on changing narratives, harmful narratives around poverty. And the other is focused on changing policy, harmful policies, and creating behaviorally informed policies around poverty in the US. So holistically, through those three efforts, I think we're providing we're applying what I think is a thorough approach. On the symptoms outcomes, that's a really interesting point. I mean, if we think about poverty at its kind of most basic level, it's not having enough income to cover your expenses. So there's certainly, as Sam, as you point out, lots of structural reasons behind that. But if we can increase people's incomes, or in this case, reduce those expenses, we could definitely help move the needle on this problem. Donardo, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Nope, you've covered it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike and Donardo. And to add my light one on, as I've gotten older, I've become more humble in my ability to impact the entire structure and system, and instead look to find opportunities to have a meaningful difference to improve the lives. And I appreciate that there are important and incredible efforts around structural change, and I'm supportive, but as we look for where to deploy our expertise, this is where we are. Ruby, we have a question before we proceed on around nonprofits. The program is really designed around individuals. If you have a specific idea for how a nonprofit might apply or participate, please send us an email. I would be open to thinking about how that might work. But the program is structured around individuals coming in as entrepreneurs and co-building businesses with us. I will just quickly crank through these next two and then move on. Paula, yes, if you're a U.S. citizen currently living in Latin America, but willing to relocate, yes, that seems reasonable. Please send us an email. But I have no reason to believe that wouldn't work. And undergraduate students, sure, anyone who is legally able to work, I think can apply. Being an undergraduate student imposes some constraints. Building a business is a hard full-time job, and so it may not be the right time, but it may be. And if you think this is the right spot for you, we want to read your application. With that, I think I'm going to proceed on, Harrison, and then we'll come back. I see there's questions are coming in. Please keep them coming. Fellow panelists, please go through and see which ones you want to take, and we'll go from there. So we thought it would be useful now to walk a little bit through how we think about building businesses and how the venture studio is structured. So it's important first to think about what is a venture studio. There's a lot of jargon, Monesi. My colleague Monesi is constantly reminding me, which frankly serves as a guild to exclude those who don't know the particular lingo. Well, I'm not interested in creating a guild, but terms can be important to distinguish between things. And so it's important to understand we're not an incubator, accelerator, investor. And by that, I mean those entities, forgetting the jargony terms I just used, those entities expect individuals or groups to come to them with an existing idea. And then they help them advance their business. So there's a burden to participate. You already have to have built a product, usually, maybe you have it be in market, have a plan, all things that are like hard to do and take time, and there are enormous barriers to doing. There's nothing wrong with accelerators or incubators, and of course we welcome investors, but it's a different role. Within a venture studio, we work together with you to co-build businesses. We look for individuals with a passion and talent and core traits that we believe are critical for successful entrepreneurship, and then we identify opportunities where there is a sufficiently meaningful opportunity to make a difference and build a viable, scalable, sustainable business. So this is a much more of a partnership. We take a long time together. A typical incubator is maybe 3 months or 6 months, and accelerator is often even shorter. We're going to bring you on for 18 months. And in that 18-month process, we will work with you to, all of these month numbers are of course rough. Life is dynamic and complicated in startup world. Don't take these as dogmatic, but more like indicative. Vivian will walk you through in a moment a little more detail on how this all works. But think of it in the beginning, we're working on identifying an opportunity where there's a behavioral science intervention that can help solve an important social challenge, where there's a sufficiently large market. And in those times we'll develop a prototype. And then in the next 6 months, we'll sell that product to to businesses or governments or whomever the buyer is, while working with Tyler and his team to bring that prototype to reality. And at the end of the year, you'll have a working product, hopefully in market with several pilot sales, and then you'll begin going out to raise additional capital to further grow your business while continuing to sell. This is the beginning of building an incredible, impactful software business. It's hard, it's complicated, there's multiple work streams, but we've done it before and we're excited to help you do it. Based on some feedback we got in the last session, I thought it was useful to go through a little bit of a few details. Sorry for all the text on this slide. I hate text slides, but I think it can be useful in some contexts. It's important to be very transparent about our structure, what you get, what you control, what you own. We are providing you salary and benefit for 18 months. We're also going to provide you general IT needs. We were planning remote from the beginning, even before the coronavirus hit. It includes computer, workspace, and so on. And a dedicated team of both individuals like you see here in the webinar with behavioral science support, but also software engineers and business designers, and not people who you do like an hour-long meeting with once a week, but who are there with you in the muck, should we say, figuring out your business idea. And we've set aside cash that is unallocated, bringing a product to market. Who knows what you're going to need? Do we need to spend it on sales and marketing? Do we need to spend it on prototypes? Do we need to spend it on external software developers to accelerate development? This is a collaboration between you and the rest of the team. And then, of course, there's our network of advisors, investors, customers, selling is hard and brutal, and it takes time and effort, but we can help broker introductions and kick those off and make that easier. In terms of ownership and control, it's your business. We are bringing you on board to be the CEO and founder of a business. And as the CEO and founder, you are responsible for the day-to-day decision-making and authority of control of your business. That said, we're investing a significant amount of our resource and our time, and we are a nonprofit and a mission public benefit corporation. And with that, we have a mission to deliver social change and improve the financial health and well-being of the individuals we're seeking to serve. And so that does not mean during these 18 months you can build whatever product you want. And so we will be deciding together on the strategy to ensure mission alignment and to ensure that your business has a high probability of success. With this, with what we're bringing to the table and what you're bringing to the table, the equity structure, you will own 40% of the business. We've looked at a lot of different studios across the globe and benchmarked what founders get. Different studios are structured in very different ways, so it's hard to get a specific benchmark, but the average is roughly 38% with the range from 10 to 50. So we feel confident that we're both in the right range and sort of towards the top of the market. This includes setting aside 10% for future employees and an ownership stake that the Public Benefit Corporation and held by Ideas 42, the nonprofit, holds. The advantage of this is that Ideas 42 is a nonprofit with a mission. It's patient capital that will ensure and impose their discipline and focusing on solving important social challenges, not investors that have limited partners yelling at them to drive a liquidity event quickly. So with that, I'm going to pause. I haven't looked at the Q&A. This was a new section we added, so hopefully this has addressed some of the questions some of you have. I will pause and see if there's others can jump in while I look at the ones that are maybe aimed for me.
Yeah, Mark, if I can just flag a question for you. I saw it sort of come up a couple of times, and I think we maybe wrote an answer, but for entrepreneurs, for ideas, for ventures, or something else?
Yeah, so our expectation is that there will be, each of the four will start their own business. We're leaving it open that two of you may meet each other and decide, wow, this is incredible, we want to work together. That has some implications on the ownership stake and control and all of that. And we are, as many of you have heard me say before, we have strong opinions, but they're loosely held, and we're open to updating as you bring new ideas.
Sounds good. I would point, Mark, you to Roger's question. Also, I see some other questions. One of them I've said that I'll answer, but I think the sort of recruitment specific questions will be best served after we talk through the recruitment process, and then we can sort of dig into the traits and entrepreneurial experience we're looking for.
Great, Roger. Thank you for asking. And building a great business is building one for the long term. We're looking for entrepreneurs who want to dedicate years of their life to this. We are budgeted to compensate you and surround you with a team for 18 months, but we will need to work with you to raise capital so that at the conclusion of 18 months, you have either investor or other capital, maybe revenue, to sustain and grow the business for the long term. And by long term, I mean, hopefully 5, 10, 15 years, and leave a legacy and an impact. Great, Loretta, that's a great one. I'm going to just take this, Harrison, and then I'll roll to the next phase to you, Vivian, I think. So the answer is yes. We're not dogmatic about building venture backable business. The reason we speak about them in that way is because we believe it imposes a discipline on us for a business model that is scalable and sustainable, and that investors themselves bring a focus and a lens that is different than ours. That said, cooperative business models and member-owned businesses are incredible, and some of the most important and key businesses in the US and elsewhere across the globe have been structured that way. So if an idea that you have is best served through an ownership structure like that, we will absolutely work with you to find a way to make that happen. I'm gonna, I think, proceed on and then work through these while I give Vivian a chance to share her incredible information with the community. So Vivian, if you wanna roll ahead.
Thanks, Mark. So in this studio, we're gonna be working towards building behaviorally informed, software-powered businesses. And you've heard us say these words at least a couple times in the past 30 minutes, but I wanna walk through each of them and give you a little bit more insight into what each of these elements means and what they mean for your business. So the first descriptor is behaviorally informed, and Mark, I'll have you show the first little bubble. And the idea here is that we're going to be drawing on insights and tools from the behavioral sciences, so psychology, behavioral economics, and other associated social sciences to make decisions about and also design products so that they're helping people do more of what they want to do. And so they're designed based on what we know about how humans actually behave. And since this behavioral perspective is going to be a big part of how we're going to be working together, I want to take a moment to talk a bit more about what this perspective means for how we think about solving problems and also designing solutions. So as you'll see on the slide, one of our mantras here at Ideas 42 is that context matters. And so we try to answer two questions with our work. And Mark, you can click the next. So the first question is, what about people's context is making it difficult for them to engage in certain behaviors? And I'll define two things quickly here. When we say context, that could be physical context. It also could include our social context, where social norms and social proof play a role, and stigmas. But it could also be processes that we have to go through, one-on-one interactions, communications. There's a lot of pieces of our lives that we would consider a context that can make behaviors more or less difficult. And we also especially focus on behaviors that we have some evidence that people want to engage in, or that engaging in those behaviors would help them reach their own goals. Then once we answer that first question, we look to answer the question of what change to that context would make it easier for people to engage in the behaviors we're trying to support. And this is that design piece. So I'm going to use an example from a past project to give you a sense of how this plays out. You can click the next slide. So this is a project with a student loan servicer called Great Lakes. And the problem we worked with them on was that borrowers who began the debt relief process weren't following through on that process. So these borrowers were people who knew they were going to have a hard time paying their loans back and wanted to avoid a number of things like damaging their credit, which is why they applied for debt relief, right? They reached out and wanted to start the process. And for context, debt relief encompasses a number of programs that can help borrowers who are having a hard time paying their loans back. So these are borrowers who recognized they were going to have a hard time paying back their loans and even reached out to find a solution, but then didn't follow through. So what's going on here? Well, it turns out that one of the elements of people's context that mattered a lot was the application form that people had to fill out to get their debt relief. So the way this worked was you would reach out to Great Lakes, tell them you needed debt relief, they would send you the form you need to fill out. And that's where a lot of people got stuck. And this is what the form looks like, or one of the forms you might receive. And this is where people got stuck, which behaviorally makes sense when you start to look at the form. It's dense, there's lots of jargon, it's hard to understand because of that jargon, and it requires collecting lots of information, documents you don't necessarily have handy. And if you make a mistake anywhere in this form, that could be a big deal and could mean not getting your relief. So all of these things layered together make it very likely that people are not going to be able to fill out this form or just going to end up not doing so. So with this insight in mind, our solution was to create a jacket for the paperwork. So you can click the next slide, Mark. And this is sort of the graphic version of that jacket. And you can see it covers all the dense information and makes it easy for people to understand how they're gonna fill out that form, and makes it easier to fill that out and less likely that you'll make mistakes. So as you can see by that number on the slide, we tested this and we saw positive results from it. The way we tested it was people who called in and asked for a physical form. Half of the people who asked for the physical form got one with a jacket, and half of the people who asked for the form got it without the jacket. And that's how we compared and saw this increase. So this is an example of something that we tested in a physical format, but that it could be automated and digitized and brought to scale, which is an example of something that can become software powered, but that doesn't initially look like it, which brings me to the next sort of text in here, which is software powered businesses. So we're focusing on software powered businesses because they allow for scale and they allow you to understand how your users are using your product. They allow you to understand what their needs are and how you can improve it. But they don't necessarily have to look like what you think of when you think of a software business. So Netflix, Google, TurboTax, these are all software businesses, but there are other businesses that are software powered because there's software behind them, but they may look different. The last feature in here that we've highlighted is the fact that we're building businesses. So there has to be a buyer and there's going to be someone paying for the product, but that might be an enterprise or an organization or a company or even government. So with all that said, you're not going to be going at this alone. Mark, you can, yeah. The studio team is going to help you narrow in on opportunities that are well suited for this behaviorally informed software powered businesses. And we're going to help you create products. So the behavioral design support is going to help you answer those questions about what is it about the context that's making things difficult, and then help you design products that actually address those barriers. There's going to be a team of software developers helping you develop the product or developing that product for you. And then business support to help you evaluate market opportunities, develop business plans, pricing models, etc. So we'll be there along the way with you and providing you that support. And one example of a behaviorally informed software powered business is one of our current ventures, Nichols. So similar to Great Lakes, the Great Lakes sleeve, Nichols is designed around the insight that the debt repayment process for student loans is opaque and confusing. And it's the fact that that process is opaque and confusing is what leads people to miss payments and eventually even default, some people. So Nichols is designed to help student borrowers improve their financial health by simply making that process easier. So again, we're not looking at people and trying to change people. We're trying to understand what about the context is making certain behaviors difficult, then creating products and businesses that change that context and help people achieve their own goals. We can go to the next. No, we'll have questions now, I think.
Great. Thank you, Vivian. And I'm going to answer a couple of these questions quickly and get to Blessing and Harrison on recruiting, where I know there are some that we have not yet answered because we're waiting for the recruiting section. So, Priya, if the org makes sense as a nonprofit, we will have a conversation about how to structure the stake and how we manage that transition. I have skepticism about funding mechanisms, but that's not to say it's off the table. Sam, in terms of financial shares, we are always open to conversations about new structures. One thing, as I mentioned to a different applicant in an email thread today, we do not like to do direct negotiation with individual entrepreneurs or individual employees, but rather conversations about should we be changing the entire structure. Individual negotiation results in bias in what people get, but it is certainly plausible to consider that. I would note the way we think of this is we generally think about this as a co-founder relationship. And so to the extent that there's a way to structure it so that the studio plus the founder feel on more co-founder footing, that is not an unreasonable request. Is there an expectation or support for fundraising? The answer is yes. We have a long and growing list of investors and who we are building and maintaining relationships with. They are aware of this pipeline and they're excited to see the businesses that come out of the studio. Your success is our success. We are joined together. And so we have no interest in leaving you alone for any part about this. Then finally, Alex, yes, the core team will be shared with the 4 entrepreneurs. This is a feature, not a bug, in that your requirements and needs will flex and change over time. And this is, we don't want to have overstaff or under, and then you have that flex financial capacity to purchase additional product engineering support through our network of on-demand developers. So with that, I'm going to move on. This is great questions, everybody. Tyler from the audience was just saying how incredible these questions were, and I'm very impressed he is. And Tyler's not an easy individual to impress. So Blessing, on to you.
All right, sounds great. Thanks. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the candidates we're looking for, and then I'm going to dig a little deeper and talk about our timeline. So the first thing I want to highlight is the importance of having lived experience of the excess costs of poverty here in the US. So that means having an understanding of the challenges faced by those experiencing excess costs, either through personal experience or by working in close proximity with individuals who face these challenges. And then the next thing I want to highlight is that we're looking for individuals that are driven and talented. So when you're completing your application, let us know why you're interested in building a social impact focused business. Show us how you've demonstrated the traits listed here on the slide. So traits like grit, creativity, and empathy. And then one more thing that I want to mention is that we recognize that everyone is coming from a different place and has been given different opportunities. So for instance, we've observed a lack of representation in the tech field. And when we look at the entrepreneur space, we see that only about 2 to 3% of those who receive funding from venture capitalists are Black and Latinx founders. And that is extremely low, and it's definitely not representative of talent that is out there. So I say all that to say that we want you, the applicants, to show us how you've made the most of the opportunities you've been given. And we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so this slide, we're gonna just dig a little deeper into the entrepreneur application process. So right now we're in the initial application stage. And so the applications opened up on the 30th of September, and then they will close on the 25th of October. So please make sure to get your applications in, because we are really looking forward to receiving them all and reading through them all. After the application stage, we're gonna send out the case studies on the 6th of November, and then they'll be due back on the 15th. And then after that, we'll hold the first round of interviews in early December. And then finally, we'll have the final round of interviews from January 4th to the 8th. And then after all that is complete, we'll be able to send out our offers to our entrepreneurs in mid-January. So make sure to go to ideas42ventures.com/apply to access the application and to find out more information about the program. And I think right now we're gonna go into questions. Oh, look at the Q&A box.
Cool. Blessing, maybe while you look at the Q&As, I've been hanging on to this anonymous question around what sort of entrepreneurial experience you need for a little while. So maybe I can speak to that briefly. So there's kind of 2 answers to this question. The first answer is you don't need any entrepreneurial experience specifically to apply to this program. So we think that there is an enormous amount of talent out there for whom opportunities like this have not been designed. And if you think that this is something that you are excited about and that you want to do, and you feel like this is a great opportunity for you, we really want you to apply. We are deliberately open to having applications from people who we haven't even imagined would apply yet. So that's thing 1. Thing 2, though, is that if you have entrepreneurial experience, and maybe even if you have entrepreneurial experience that doesn't look like a software business, but maybe you've started a small business in your community, or maybe you've worked on another kind of small business, or have some other relationship to entrepreneurship, even if it's not behaviorally informed, software-powered entrepreneurship, that would be an awesome thing to highlight in your application. We have a specific vision for the kinds of businesses we're building in this studio, but we think that lots of the skills that will help you do that well are things that you could learn from tons of different kinds of entrepreneurship. So definitely, if that sounds like you, tell us about it, and tell us about how you think all your different kinds of experiences can translate to the kinds of work that we're doing here in the studio.
Thanks. Here we got 3
I see
questions
it.
here on the case study, so I think it would be useful for a little Harrison and Blessing, if you want to maybe talk through that a bit.
Sure. I can start, and Blessing, or do you want to start,
You can
Blessing?
start and then I can fill in.
Cool. Yeah, so you know, in the early days of the studio, we were calling the case study a take-home activity. In some ways, I wish that we were still calling it a take-home activity, because I think that's a better description of what we're going to do here. So sometimes that word case study gets used to sound like we're going to sort of ask you a bunch of time-pressured questions. That's not really going to be what's going to happen. So we're going to email out an activity that has 3 parts. To folks who make it to this phase on November 6th, then you'll have 9 days to do it, including 2 weekends. And this has really been designed on our website. We say, you know, we care about what you've done in the past, but we care more about what you can do. This has been designed to simulate some of the activities that we know that entrepreneurs are going to have to do so that we can see what you can do. And really, this is an opportunity for you to sort of show us your skills. Beyond just what you've been able to do in the past, but sort of what you can do with this contained environment. So I'm going to decline to say a ton more about the exact structure of the case study, just for fairness to all applicants. If you get to this phase, we're going to make sure that you have time to do it. But it is something that we've gone back and forth on as a team many, many times to try to really crystallize, like, what are some of the key things that we know that our entrepreneurs are going to need to do in the studio, and can we give you an opportunity to do that in a supported way in this application process.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah. So I see another question here, and it's about whether or not we would expect entrepreneurs to leave their jobs to work full-time here at the Venture Studio if accepted. And so the answer is yes. As Mark has mentioned, building a business is definitely a full-time, it's a full-time job, and you're definitely going to need to have the time available to focus on building these businesses. So we do expect entrepreneurs to leave their current full-time jobs to come and work here.
All right, we've now entered the open Q&A phase. Presentation portion of this is over. Thank you to Blessing and Donardo and Harrison and Mike and Vivian for preparing these incredible materials, and Katie and Monacy for your support throughout. We're gonna, as I said before, I will stay on as long as there are questions still coming in, and I see one here. But while we wait for additional ones, I want to remind everyone, applications are due in 9 days. Feel free to email us if you have any follow-up questions. Please spread the words across your networks. I am a true and big believer in, even if you're interested in this, please share it widely. It's an opportunity that makes a lot of sense, hopefully for a lot of different people. And thank you all for your time. So Harrison, your question.
Sure. Just seeing that there are questions about the case study, and I'll also tackle this one on the structure of the 2 interviews. Will every applicant be doing the case study? No. We, sort of due to wanting to use your time well, and due to our own team's capacity, will not be able to offer a case study to every applicant. So we will let you know if you've passed from this first application round to the case study by the time we send out case studies. There's also a question here about structure of the 2 interviews. I don't want to say a ton here, again, just sort of out of an inclination of wanting to make sure it's a level playing field for all applicants. But I will say that a big part of the work that Blessing and I especially have done, and that the rest of the team has contributed to over the past several months, has been trying to think through lots of the different areas where bias can creep into job applications, and trying to de-bias our process as much as possible. And so there's lots of great information out there about how the best job interviews are ones that have some structure, where there's multiple evaluators who are listening to the candidate and who are independently evaluating. So we're not just sort of making snap decisions about people. And so those are things that we're going to plan to do in our interview. Aside from that, it'll be a Zoom interview. It'll probably be about an hour long. And if you get to that phase, there'll be more information about signing up, and there'll probably be an opportunity to ask clarifying questions for sure.
Great. Thanks, Harrison. I'm going to go through a couple here. I have a question about if something comes up, can you defer to a later cohort? My answer to this is we will do everything in our power if we want to have you a part of the cohort to make it happen. We are not an Accenture-sized business where we can, commit to future slots to everything. But once, this process is rigorous and detailed and thoughtful. Thank you again, Harrison Blessing. And if you make it through, we want to find a way to work with you. In terms of Alex, in terms of geographic location, we were always intending to be remote. We were hoping to be able to spend a few weeks together here and there, and I still have some small hope that might happen. But we believe that, again, to reduce the barriers to entrepreneurship and open it to all, great businesses can be built anywhere. Please, if you build it in your community. Roger, I'm not entirely sure I understand, but building one business is hard enough. If you have a particular thesis on how to build multiple, then great. But my guess is that one will be truly all-consuming. Blessing, I see you've got one here.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So Sarah's asked, what are traits that would give you pause in an application? And so the answer to that is it's those traits that we've listed on the website and that we also listed on the previous PowerPoint. So just being able to show that you are committed to social impact work and being able to show that you have grit, you are creative, you are empathetic, and you have high acceleration. Just being able to show those traits in this application, just do that and we will be able to, you will stand out, basically, yeah. I see that Mike, you've grabbed a question, so I can pass it on to you.
Sure. So the question is, are we exploring any other topic areas for Ideas 42 from Sam? So I hope this answers your question, Sam. I'll answer it again in two parts. Ideas 42, the nonprofit separate from the Venture Studio, works across a range of other topic areas ranging from environment, sustainability, to health, to international development. As far as the Venture Studio goes, this cohort is focused on the excess cost of poverty. There will be future cohorts. So for those, we will consider other topics. If you have suggestions, we'd love to hear them. All right, I guess we're passing questions. So Mark, you had claimed the next one about kind of business models and who we target.
Yeah, is it necessary for the business to target low-income individuals exclusively, or could it target a larger swath of individuals, some of whom may be low-income? As you probably note a theme in this, my answer is we're not dogmatic about anything, but the business that we want to build need to have clear and direct through lines to supporting and improving the financial health and well-being of low and moderate income Americans. Is it plausible that a business we settle on building supports and helps people who are not in the community? Absolutely. We're not in the business, quote unquote, of excluding people from participating, but it's about the defaults and the orientation of the business. And there's lots of different ways businesses get brought to market and who they serve first and how their structures are designed and how the experience is constructed. And we want to be sure that our defaults and orientation are around supporting those in need. And if that happens to help others, no problem. But it cannot and should not be focused on the well-off first. So now, Vivian, to you.
Yeah. So I have Gabriella's question on the emphasis of a software-powered business within the context of this cohort. So I think there's sort of two-ish questions in here. One is around the emphasis on software powered, and that emphasis comes back to 2 points. One of which is that something that's software powered is scalable, which means it can reach more people. And also that when you have a software powered business, that means you're going to have access to data about how people are using your product, but also what other needs they might have. And that means you can grow and continue to adapt to the needs of your customers or new customers and clients. As far as within the context of this cohort, it's hard for us to speak to what exactly these businesses are going to look like because of how open we've left it as far as working together with the entrepreneurs who are going to be coming in to find something that they're passionate about, and that they can find, that we find ways to work together to develop business or find solutions to the pieces that they're passionate about. But I can say that what a software powered business looks like is, there's a range of things that those will look like. So they can look like actual software products that are on your phone or on the computer and that you access digitally. But they can also look more physical and still be software powered because there's software that is underlying it that allows it to work. So one example of that would be if you've ever received a mailer that compares your energy use to other people's energy use. I'm in New York City and I've received these from our electrical grid. And that, although that's a mailer from my utility company, that is software powered because there's software behind that, pulling in all that data about usage, comparing my usage to other people's usage, and then creating a mailer that can get sent out. So the answer is there's the full range there, and we're excited to see where folks take us.
Thank you, Vivian. And I think that's a great answer. And as I was saying to our executive director, Josh, earlier today, we don't necessarily have to build a software business. There may be an opportunity where we identify something else, but it is our area of expertise and our belief it's the fastest and the most efficient way to scale. So I have a question here from Paul about patient capital. This is me again, sorry, Monacy, using jargon. What I mean here is that there are many routes from investors who are looking for returns on their investment quite quickly. And this can impose requirements on founders that may be misaligned with their vision and desires. So this may include working to get faster to profitability so that you can sell your business, or moving into an adjacent area of the business that is less interesting to you, but the investor sees as more profitable. Our patience is that we are not looking for an immediate return, but we're looking to build businesses for the long term. And that means investing in core research and development, software development to build infrastructure that can scale, developing a brand and an intervention that works repeatedly and in a way that we are confident in, and then a sales team and network that can distribute this product widely. And that takes time. These businesses, a typical software as a service business, is a 7 to 9 year exercise before you achieve a level that is typically associated with some form of either maybe going public or getting bought or something like that. And so we do not expect you to be profitable at the end of 18 months. We expect at the end of 12 months for your business to be sufficiently well defined, with a clarity of your long-term vision and a set of pilot partners lined up to use your product so that it's attractive to external investment. All right, Vivian.
Yeah, so there's a question here around what the expected range of collaborative hours per week. And my answer to that is that there are going to be there's several people on this team, some of whom their full-time job is supporting the 4 entrepreneurs. So I don't know that I have a number, but it really is going to be collaborative, and you're always going to have people who are available to work with you and that are going to be asking to work with you and reaching out and supporting you in your work, or doing supportive things on the side and then coming back to show you the outputs of what you worked on. So you might come up with a prototype and share that with a software developer or someone who will build wireframes, and then they'll go out and build the software, bring it back, and you can work together to get that to a place that you're happy with and you're ready to user test. Similarly, we might train you on user testing, and then you'll come with us and shadow and user test yourself. So as far as amount of collaborative time. It's going to be a lot of collaborative time. That's part of the model, is that you're not just going to be left alone to try to figure things out on your own and then come back and ask us questions a few times a week. We're going to be in it with you, and there's going to be several people there who are going to be supporting you throughout.
Thanks, Vivian. And to add on to that, different types of work are better suited to different levels of ongoing engagement. So Tyler and his engineering team work best when they're able to tunnel and focus on a specific project over a specific period of time. And so there's a likelihood that him and his engineers, William and we're bringing on a third, will focus exclusively on your work for a month. But then there's my time or someone else's time where my highest leverage value add is going to be, one long day session prepping for a big sales meeting, and then we don't speak for a couple of days or maybe even a week, and then we have several hour-long sessions. And so different types of work, you have different types of engagement. So then some successful businesses. The business Vivian mentioned, her letter she received, I was a part of that business for a long time, called O-Power. That business ended up going public and having it was an interesting experience, and ultimately being bought by Oracle. We have 3 businesses today in different phases of growth. One is focused on reducing chronic absenteeism in K-12 students. That business closed a reasonably substantial seed fundraising round about 18 months ago. We have another business, Vivian mentioned, Nichols, focused on student debt. That business has raised an angel round and is currently deployed at 12 different banks and schools and looking to raise additional capital. And then we have a third business in the recidivism space, working with probation and parole offices, focused on supporting individuals departing incarceration. That business has been very fortunate to receive some significant grant funding and philanthropic contributions, which has allowed us to grow at a patient discipline approach. So we have some successes, but no Silicon Valley unicorns. Vivian, to you.
Yeah.
We got a couple.
So I paired 2 of these questions together around the team that's working with you. So how long the team is working with you, you will have people working with you throughout those 18 months. Which parts of the team is going to change over the course of when you're working. So really early on, Tyler and his team are going to be less involved because you're not at the point where you're developing the software. You're still at that discovery phase or trying to figure out what exactly you're going to be working on and understanding more about that context. So over 18 months, you'll have a team working with you, but who's on that team is going to fluctuate. As far as the dedicated team members, you can see the profile of the existing team on our website. I think there's an About Us. I know there's a page, I just don't remember if it's / About Us. So you can look at our profiles there. There are a few people we still need to hire. So that team's going to be growing and is going to just add to who we already are. And the dedicated team, sorry. The last piece of this question is around whether there's a dedicated team for each venture or if that team is shared. The team is going to be shared. So as Mark mentioned, there's fluctuations in how each entrepreneur is going to be working. And we've structured ourselves so that we're able to be available to folks, but not overstaffing ourselves, because then that would reduce the amount of money that you have available for your spending. So the full team is split across all the ventures.
Honesty.
So this is a simple one. Has anyone on our panel gone through this process? So the answer is no, none of us have personally gone through this process, but we've actually all worked with different partners and fintechs and startups a lot in the past in different ways. Mike has worked with the financial solutions lab companies to advise them on behavioral advice and how to structure their products. I've worked with a set of digital financial service providers internationally. Mark's obviously worked with the entrepreneurs at the studio already. Vivian, I mean, I could go on and on. Blessing and Donardo have done some awesome partner work in the social impact space. So we're hoping that collectively together we are helpful as a unit that has seen a lot of the challenges that some of these products have faced in the past and can help guide you as well.
Thank you, Manasi. I want to take a pause for a moment and again thank all the incredible panelists. And please, no problem if you need to go do important family life things. To all of you participants, I see there's still a nice number out there. We're going to keep rolling. Rosa, I'm going to get to your question in a second, but I wanted to just give the social proof of okayness if folks need to jump off. So thank you. So Rosa, since this, I'm going to read this because it makes my heart warm. Since it's just so open-ended, which I love, by the way, would you expand a bit on how all 4 of the chosen entrepreneurs will work together or not? For instance, would we all go through the opportunity identification process together and branch off as appropriate? It's a wonderful question, and my expectation is that the 4 of you plus the individuals you're seeing on the screen and others will become like a startup family. We will be, Mike and Donardo are preparing some incredible materials to kick us our thinking off around the excess costs of poverty. We will each learn from each other. We will be talking about different ideas, batting them around, validating whether or not the markets are appropriate or reasonable or big enough. And we are each going to learn from each other. As I think someone on the panel mentioned to me in a different call, the only demonstrated proof of a good brainstorm session is how many ideas you generate. That is the only way to judge whether there are any actually good ideas. So we will be working together and as you say, branch off when appropriate. Manasi, looks like you already got that one. What is your plan? Oh, it's a fun one. What is your plan to ensure there isn't internal competition across ventures? There's, I think, 2 kinds of competition that I can think of, and panelists, I would encourage you to jump in if you have others. One is whether you're competing in the same market, and the second is you're competing for resource. Nothing is ever easy, and I am not going to enter into this with some complex token system for allocating resource. We're going to work together to figure out the best thing for the groups to advance. My expectation is that there will be sufficient resource, and we will be able to collaboratively identify how to allocate and share resources efficiently. If 2 of you decide that there's a particular area that you're both interested in, my general view is that's probably a signal that there's a huge market opportunity there. I've brought a lot of businesses to investors who've said to me, there's nobody else doing this. This market can't possibly be large enough. And so there's implicit in this is a signal from investors that if there's multiple entrepreneurs working in something that has some demonstration, there's a meaningful market. We will manage this as it arises, but I don't want to pre-commit to some mechanism for ensuring it. But net, I think that building a business is something where we are constantly operating in a resource scarce world, and figuring out how to operate within that is a part of the challenge.
I'll jump in also.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the set of topic, like our sort of focus area is like pretty wide, right? It could be any sort of variety of excess costs. It could be around housing, it could be around financial services, it could be around other things. As Mark said, like, I don't think we mind if 2 folks go into a similar area. I think that's a signal of something, but I think we also want to foster a sort of community feel on this as part of this studio, and recognizing that there's something very unique about being an entrepreneur on your own, building a business, and how that can be kind of isolating sometimes. We'd also like to encourage the entrepreneurs to work with each other and be support for each other, and broaden that to the rest of the studio entrepreneurs. And so we hope that there's also incentive for you guys to not compete, but also help one another out as you learn through this process.
Harrison, looks to you here.
Yeah, Eric, this is a great question. So Eric's question is, for those of us who have no startup experience, is there someone on the team to help us navigate through this process? I'm really glad that you asked this. And the answer is yes. I think there's a couple of ways we could take this. So in terms of this process, if we're talking about the venture studio itself, yes, like you are looking at us. We are here specifically to help you navigate the ins and outs of thinking about a topic, starting a business, evaluating the market size. If those are things that when you hear them, you're like, I don't know exactly what that means, that is a reasonable starting point for somebody who is interested in this. And it is our job to help you navigate that. In terms of the actual application process itself, I think this Q&A, it's interesting, we did another one of these over the weekend. I think this Q&A has been a little more, I would say, sort of like startup logistical, partially because of lots of the questions that we've gotten. So if you feel like there's a lot of jargon here and you don't quite know how to respond to it, help@ideas42ventures.com is your friend. That goes to, specifically it goes to Mark Blessing and I, and we're forwarding around the team as necessary. And we're really open to your questions there, even if they're just simple clarification, or if there's something on this call that it would be helpful to just sort of know what we meant by it, hit us up at that email address. The last thing I'll say there is that, you know, while we've maybe been a little technical in places on this call, we're designing the process that you're going through to apply to be an opportunity for you to showcase who you are and what your background and skills are, whether or not that includes something like having worked at a startup before. And actually, especially if that includes something that is not like having worked at a startup before. So I would encourage you to take a look at the questions that we're starting to ask in that first application phase. They're really things like what motivates you, what social problems are important to you, how do you want to have impact? If that's the way you are thinking about this, I think you're going to be in a good position. And I hope that those questions will be things that are exciting for you to think about. And if you have any questions about them or ways we can clarify, let us know. help@ideas42ventures.com. So I want to just I'm gonna verbally stall for like another 15 seconds to give anyone else a chance to ask a last question. And then maybe I'll pass it back to Mark one last time to say thank you and good night. Any advice, words of encouragement to be shared with those who have great potential who don't make it to the final four? That is a great question. Looks like Mark wants to answer it.
Great, Loretta, thank you. And my view is that we're building a network and a community here around a set of shared values and shared interests. And we're not doing this as a one-off activity, but rather trying to building an operation for the long term. And as I shared on the previous webinar, one of my favorite pieces of academic research involves an insight around what the value of an elite college education. And it turns out the single most powerful indicator of one's long-term financial success was not whether you went to an elite school or whether you got in to an elite school, but whether or not you applied. So Loretta, and to the rest of you, I encourage you and ask that you please apply. We will stay in touch. We will be having future cohorts. There'll be opportunities to work with our ventures and many other things. So thank you so much. And William, I'm gonna let Harrison answer the technical question. Thank you, Harrison.
Yeah, sorry, I actually meant to type a reply to this one. Yes, this will be on the website, and we know it's doubly important because some people weren't able to make this time. So that is definitely something we will do as soon as we are able to. Great, I'm gonna continue my tactic of light stalling until we see that there's no more questions here. It looks like we're pretty much wrapped up. Thank you everybody so much for joining us. Oh, one last one. How can we demonstrate our personal experience with the excess costs of poverty? Stories, examples. This is a really good question, and one that Blessing and I have been thinking about a lot. In the first set of application questions, we asked you a variety of questions about your relationship and excitement to the topic area. And the way that we asked that is about communities that experience the excess costs of poverty. So the best way to demonstrate this experience is by answering those questions with whatever stories or examples are most salient to you and to communities that matter to you. We assume that we're going to sort of have a conversation with applicants over the course of this process. That's a fun question that just came in. So we assume that over the course of this process, we're going to get to know applicants better as we go. So we are looking for people with really lived and direct experience, and we think that there's going to be lots of points over the course of this application where you can tell us about that. And so get started in the application, and as we go, we'll talk more about why these topics are important to you, and why you have a perspective on them that is something that's a good fit for the studio. I don't know, who's the fun person? We're all pretty fun.
I think we've had like limited opportunity to show you how fun we actually are. I would say as like a mini case study, my husband's coworkers are always wondering whether the other person in his house is at a party because he hears so much they hear so much laughing in the background of the calls. I think we laugh a lot, and it's definitely like a low-key kind of fun group, and we encourage people to laugh as well and be fun. And I'd encourage you all to continue to ask more questions if you have them, because Mark will be here all night, as promised. So don't hesitate and feel like we're wrapping up.
I mean, we're at 49. We got to hit 50, right? Hey, thank you, Sam. Katie, you want to take this one? I feel like your mic needs.
Yeah, let me just read it. Well, that's an interesting question. I think some of us have been working together for several years. Actually, Vivian and I worked together on it with a group of nonprofits to teach them about behavioral design a few years ago. Those were nonprofits ranging from housing providers to financial capability programs. Monacy actually worked at Ideas 42 before any of the rest of us did. More than 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago.
12 years ago.
Yeah. 12 years ago, yeah. So we've known each other a while. Maybe Mark is the newest member of the group, bringing the entrepreneurship and technology perspective. But all of that to say, it depends on what your idea of fun is to say who the fun person is. If it's reality shows, then Monacy's your person. If it's making apple cider or fermenting things, that's Harrison. If you're a musician, you should talk to Blessing, who sings and plays various instruments. So yeah, we do have a lot of fun.
Katie's into horror and making costumes, which is
right.
Comes up pretty frequently.
It's my season right now.
All right, Paula has a question. I think maybe Mike or Donardo, you want to take that one?
Sure. For a few reasons. One, it is important in that these excess costs really do manifest themselves in so many aspects of life, and really are a drag on the limited resources that tens of millions of people in the US have. Two, it's also like not super specific. You know, we had to spend a couple slides explaining what excess costs of poverty were, and that's by design. We wanted a category, we wanted a topic area through which we would be able to recruit for founders and have them not step on each other's toes too much. And then it's also, I think, just really interesting. You know, a lot of anti-poverty efforts focus on increasing people's incomes. That's a warranted and justifiable approach. So we were really excited about the opportunity to tackle these problems from a different angle. Does anyone else have anything else to add to that question? If not, we could go to Mark to answer Sarah's question.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. We're not in the business of prognostication about the virus. We have an office in DC, New York, and California. And if entrepreneurs are in those cities, we would welcome you when we return to the office to come share space with us. And we do hope to be able to gather together, both for work sessions, but also for convenings with investors and academics and others. But as a default, I would plan on working remotely, and we will be providing you with the physical resources needed to make sure your remote workspace is comfortable, secure, quiet, quiet-ish. As many on the call here have seen my daughters interrupt multiple calls. I appreciate the complexities that working from home, but not really working from home brings. So that would be my thought on that.
Can I
also,
oh, sorry, Vivian, go ahead.
all right. I'll also add that that was always the plan, was to be remote, even pre-pandemic, forcing everyone to learn how to work remotely, with the idea that co-location is itself a barrier to folks, and having to move. Not everyone has that flexibility or opportunity, even if they're paid to be able to move. There's life circumstances that don't allow it. So we'd always planned for things to be remote to allow for that flexibility and remove that barrier. On the theme of these fun questions, and this is something I wanted to add earlier, we as an organization have been working remotely since at least since I joined in 2015. So this is how we work, and we've learned and failed and learned again how to work remotely in a way that's productive and helpful and helps foster a sense of community. So we've been doing this a long time, and so if there's any extent to which remote work is worrisome, we've worked on it, and we're here to help you and support you and help make it feel like a community.
Yeah, Vivian, that's like exactly along the lines of what I was going to say. I was going to add a personal note here, which is that I've been at Ideas 42 for 4.5 years, and for the first 2 of those, I was in our office in DC. It was really great and fun, and I loved going to the office every day and interacting with my colleagues there. And I wound up moving to the West Coast for personal life reasons, and was sort of excited to be working remotely, but also unsure how it would go. And 2.5 years later, I'm still here. I still have long running jokes with many of these, with my colleagues on these calls, and feel like we have a really good collaborative and sort of like culture first organization that has, for me, survived the transition from in-person to remote. So I have no doubt that that will be the same for folks who join us as entrepreneurs. And like, as much as remote work is something that people can do, and obviously this version of doing it from our own homes is like a little different than what that was like a year ago. I think it's something that we're pretty good at as an organization.
I like how you referred to Canada as the West Coast. That was interesting.
Look, I'm on the West Coast of Canada. Yeah, hi from Vancouver Island. We're actually all in interesting places. So yeah, we can do it. Can we give examples of how we cultivate a remote collaborative culture? Zoom or email? Yeah, totally. So despite my failed attempt to start an Ideas 42 Slack a while ago, yes, Zoom and email are the 2 ways that we do this. So we are, so in general, Ideas 42 is a culture and values first organization. So we have a set of core values that are sort of the ways that we interact with each other. And those are things like a spirit of generosity towards each other, a commitment to rigor, a commitment to doing good. And so that's sort of like the highest level part of all the work we do. And then the tools that we use to do that are like email, Google Docs, GChat, hopping on Zoom, and in our previous lives, traveling to see each other as relevant and appropriate to the projects we're working on. I don't know if anyone else wants to add. I know that like individual teams at Ideas 42 sometimes do things a little bit differently, and my guess is that the Venture Studio will sort of develop its own remote and collaborative culture, but I think it's more about the ways that we work with each other and the sort of values that drive that than any particular tool. We don't have any magical holograph projector that allows us to be in person, unfortunately.
I'll say that we also have some like more informally organized things. Like we have a trivia night that we do across the whole organization with people all over the place. We have paper clubs and coffees and stuff. So like, I feel like I've actually gotten to know a lot of people that I never worked with directly in person during this pandemic, which I think is pretty cool to see despite all these complicated restrictions.
Harrison, you're being invited to the Venture Studio Slack channel right now.
Cool. I just want to post gifts.
So there's a lot of opportunities for that. There's a question here about the difference between Overlap and Ideas 42 as a firm and the new Venture Studio. So Ideas 42 is a 501c3 nonprofit doing research and partnering with foundations, governments, and other organizations to work across the US and the globe. The Venture Studio is wholly owned by Ideas 42, but itself is organized as a public benefit corporation, which gives us the flexibility to accept capital in different forms than the nonprofit and to deliver on the equity share as I outlined earlier. We share many things outlined in Harrison's core values and commitments to rigor, but we do have some separate operational structures.
And I think to an extent, the way that'll look for the entrepreneurs on a day-to-day is that behavioral design and behavioral science support that I talked about, that is coming from Ideas 42. And then the tech support and the business support is going to be coming from folks who have those expertise and skills and Mark. So you'll be interacting with Ideas 42 and have us there as support, but there will also be other people with other expertise to drive the business development.
And at least so far, that's something that seems to have been working pretty well. So for example, a year ago, I, as a C3 employee, worked sort of in a partner relationship with Nichols, one of our ventures, answering some specific behavioral design questions that they had as they were building things out. So this is sort of something that we've done with existing Venture Studio companies, something that I've been part of and have really enjoyed on the nonprofit side. And so I think our hope is that structure continues to work well. Again, obligatory question pause. Our numbers have deflated to 15 attendees still on the line, though to the 15 people who are still here, thank you. That's truly like we appreciate your making the time for this and your questions and thoughts. This has been, I've had fun. I'm not seeing any additional questions here, and so maybe now is the time to call it and say good night and thanks everyone. Yeah, looks like it. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for your time, and yeah, take care. We look forward to seeing your applications.